So good morning, everyone. And firstly, I'm very pleased to be standing here, a great audience here, to tell a little bit more about our story, about what we as Coyote Logistics are doing. We're relatively new in Europe, so I think it's fair to say that a little bit of explanation about what we're doing here is at place. But secondly, I want to share with you how we see the business at the moment and what kind of challenges the industry is actually facing with today. Those are not only our views from Coyote Logistics, those are also the views of a lot of the shippers and the carriers that we've done a lot of research with them, and we're sharing some of these research ideas with you today as well. Last but not least, it's obviously nice to talk about what's happening in the industry, what the challenges are, but where we're here for today, and I think Volker gave already some good examples of how you could practically, from a practical perspective, implement that. And that's what I would like to do today as well. So not only talk about what are the challenges out there, but also what are the different scenarios, or what can we actually do now in the upcoming years to tackle those challenges. So I won't be talking a lot about autonomous driving and about blockchain. We don't have a lot of billies actually, right? So it's really about what can we do, let's say, in the upcoming 2 years to tackle the industry challenges. So, for those of you who don't know us very well, we are, as Coyote Logistics, we are a third-party logistics provider. We're a matchmaker, right? We connect shippers and carriers in Europe together. We do that with our own platform technology. That technology has been developed in-house. Actually, Coyote was founded to become a software company. Right? We develop more into the transportation and logistics industry. So we use our platform to bring shippers and carriers together. So a big part of our organization is actually the technology. That's the foundation that we have there. And by doing this, we focus a lot, obviously, on the empty trucks that are out there in Europe, trying to create a lot of visibility and making sure that those empty trucks are used in the most optimal way, using the algorithms that we have within our organization. Coyote was founded in 2006 in Chicago. As Frank mentioned yesterday, UPS acquired Coyote in 2015, and since 2017, we are operating in Europe as well. We did that by acquiring a smaller-sized UK-based freight brokerage company called FreightX. We used that as the basis for our growth in Europe and then started scaling up afterwards. We rebranded the business to Coyote Logistics, of course. So the scale up, it's all about numbers. In our model, where we bring supply and demand together on a platform, it's volumes that matter, right? So we're scaling up rapidly in Europe. As you can see here, the main corridors are still probably UK to the rest of Europe, but we're rapidly expanding our network throughout Europe as well. This is the only way how our model can actually be successful. Currently, we have about 300 Coyotes in Europe, spread over 3 different offices. So the foundation of our model is pretty simple. It's based on 3 pillars. On the one hand side, the main one is the technology, right? We have our platform there. We have in Chicago about 150 plus developers constantly working on our platform technology, constantly updating what we have there to make sure that that's suited for our customers. And our customers are, in this case, the shippers and the carriers. We believe that technology is not the only thing. That's not the only solution that you can have out there. If computer says no, we need to have an answer, right? So we combine technology with people. So we hire and recruit the best people out there, by the way, not specifically out of the transportation and logistics industry. We train them, and we use them together with the technology. We can make them extremely productive by using our technology there. If we then combine that with our extreme focus on execution, our no excuses philosophy, we have a very interesting model that is getting a lot of traction in Europe as well. So, from a road freight perspective, where we get that question a lot, so we're new, we need to explain ourselves. So where do you position yourself? Where can we, in the whole spectrum, specifically of the road freight business, where should we position you? So actually we use this slide a lot there. So on the one hand side, you have more the traditional brokers, if you will, heavy reliance on people, using technology as well, but the majority there is still the network and the people that are out there. On the other side of the spectrum, you have let's say, the freight exchange platforms, right? So the pure technology-based organizations. Growing as well, difficult to scale up though. Specifically when it comes to quality, it's very difficult at this stage right now to purely use technology for that. Again, we believe that combination of people and technology is the magic formula there. So that's where we're focusing on right now as well. We are not there yet, specifically in Europe, so we try to further develop our organization. And actually what we're trying to do is we will grow our organization in terms of people, but then we will further continue with digitizing that and making sure that they become more productive. So actually once we've reached that, let's say we were 300 right now, once we reach that about 500 people, then we want to double the business with that number of people by fully focusing on that platform technology. So that's where we are today, and we will be able to focus a lot on the more complexer supply chain setups. And this is specifically also a trend that we're seeing that is currently dictating our business. So supply chains are getting more complex. If we go more into that one, a little bit into the trends that we currently see in the market, there's a few observations that we summarized here on this slide. So in the first place, we see that volatility is actually increasing. So the peaks are getting higher and less predictable. Right? So the business is going up and down all the time. That's a tough one for our business, right? That's very difficult for us to control that, for the shipper, for the carrier, and for the middleman like we are. The direct impact of that is that we see that a lot of our customers are spending less time on forecasting, spending less time on actually looking at the data, the historical data of the last 12 months, try to clean that, because in many cases it has come from different systems, clean that data, and then use that as a forecast. We're seeing that more and more companies are using real-time data, right? Data today. What do we see is happening right now, and try to predict then a little bit more what's going to happen in the future. That requires actually a little bit of a different setup, right? If you're more looking at real-time data than trying to use historical data to forecast. At the same time, and I mentioned that already, the supply chains are becoming more complex, right? We're seeing that all of us, we want different products, different varieties. So as a direct consequence, the complexity of the supply chains are increasing. The cost, obviously, the direct impact of that is that the costs are rising. And with costs rising and supply chains becoming more complex, it's extremely difficult to have an agile setup there. And agility is indeed, as mentioned before already, one of the important elements, let's say, of us going forward. This also, we see that coming back in longer lead times. So because of the complexity of the supply chains, we see that plants are not always able to cope with the demands that they have, also based on the volatility. And the lead time, specifically when we look at trucking, is increasing, or at least getting more volatile as well. So a lot of our carriers that are working for us say, like, I'm working for this one shipper, but actually the lead time, or I need to wait there somewhere between 6 and 18 hours. Well, I cannot plan my business based on those numbers. So that's a direct impact that we're seeing of the complexity of the supply chain. Last but not least, we see that the market is concentrating more. There's a few bigger players, so the pressure on the suppliers is definitely there, which means that there's a intensified need, or at least attention towards performance measures. It's not specifically a bad thing, I would say, but it's definitely something that we're seeing. Now, these are not only our observations. We verified that with shippers and carriers out there in the market. We interviewed them. We sent out surveys in order to get a full picture about what our customer really wants. So the trends that we're seeing, are they reflected by the shippers and carriers out there? The good thing is that they are, right? So if we look at specifically that research that we've done, the challenges that we see there from both the shippers and the carriers are very much aligned. Obviously, there's a difference there, but the pressure on cost, specifically from a shipper side, and on the increasing cost of transportation on the other side, is the obvious one, right? There's not a big surprise coming out of this survey. All of them are actually not big surprises. The good thing here is actually that there's a lot of alignment actually on the things that we need to work on. The bad thing here is that those elements were there 3 years already as well, and apparently we didn't really move on to get solutions for that. The driver shortage is specifically a big one. On the shipper side, flexibility obviously becomes a more important one there as well. Talking about the cost of transportation, we've asked a lot of our carriers how they see their cost increasing over the last 6 months, and more than half of them mentioned to us that they've seen the cost in 6 months rise with probably a little bit over 8% in 6 months' time, right? We foresee that the market specifically in 2019 will continue to be, let's say, a challenging one, and we expect an increase in cost of about 15 to 20% even, right? So that's a big increase. Looking at the cost pressure on the other side that a lot of the shippers have, that's probably one that's going to be a little bit conflicting there. The main cost drivers, again, not a big surprise. Fuel prices, the lack of drivers, obviously a big one in there. But the third one, the regulations, the country regulations, and also with respect to driving times, are having more and more of an impact on that one as well. We had a few respondents actually mentioning to us the driver shortage is not a pan-European one, it's a regional one, right? We have capacity issues in specific regions. We see right now, we have a lot of carriers also from the eastern part of Europe. They say, with the rules and regulations right now, plus the growth that we're seeing in Eastern Europe, why should I go to Germany? I can stay here. I have the same amount of business. The ease of doing business is a little bit lower. So I have no real intention to go to Germany. Actually, intensifying the shortage in Germany, but causing for, let's say, little pressure on that one in Eastern Europe. So the regulations are definitely having an impact on that. Now, these changes that we are seeing can be summarized in the following way. On the one hand side, if we look at the recent developments, the capacity is obviously a big issue, the shortage that we're seeing in the market, but also how we are using the capacity that is out there, right? The largest trucking commodity in the world, I would say, is still air, right? We are transporting somewhere between 25 and 35% of air throughout Europe, right? So those are all empty trucks. We don't believe that we can solve that issue because a lot of that is actually based on the route imbalance. But the empty shipments is definitely something that we can still work on. On top of that, the complexity of supply chains are actually also causing that the trucks are out there. The fill rate of those trucks is actually becoming a little bit less. Somewhere around 50 to 60% fill rate, and that number has been going down a little bit. So if you combine empty shipments with trucks that are not fully utilized, and you combine those two, then the efficiency of the market is somewhere between 40 and 50%. So there's a lot of room for actually further optimizing, let's say, the whole ecosystem in Europe. And that's where we try to play a role in together with our shippers and our carriers. The high volatility and the increased cost are obviously all the developments that we're seeing there impacting our business. On the other side, so what do we need? What do we require right now to change that? Firstly, we need to build specifically for the volatility, specifically also to deal with topics like Brexit in the future. We need to increase that flexible layer. We need to create organizations where flexibility is becoming more and more of a dominant factor. All of our shippers are actually asking us, how can we further increase our flexibility, right? At the same time, the visibility is extremely important there, right? So if we want to cope with that volatility, and if we want to make sure that we can actually take actions there and remember the real-time data prediction that I mentioned, then visibility and fast response times are extremely important there. So those are the ones that will get a lot of attention from us, but also from the other players in the market right now. And again, I mentioned it already, try to focus more on these sustainable models, right? The efficiency of our industry, again, is somewhere between around 50%, so there's still a lot of room for growth there. We will never get to a fully efficient model, specifically also based on, let's say, the trade characteristics, but there's, for sure, we believe there's a lot of room for growth there. So the need for collaboration is very high, and this is actually echoed by everyone that we talk to, right? So the sense of urgency, let's say that we really want to change something right now, is definitely there. 83%, for instance, of the shippers mentioned to us, we need to collaborate more. We need to collaborate more with the carriers. That, by the way, is a relatively easy investment, I would say, right? Because there's not a lot of funding that you need to do for that. The second one there is investment in technologies and systems, closely followed by that collaboration. So we need to collaborate more to build that trust and to make sure that we open up, that we share data to allow us to further optimize. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the technology is there. And I'll have a few more slides on that one later. Now, if we look at those trends and if we look at, okay, well, that's fine. So what can we do with that, right? So how can we actually respond to that? For us, as Coyote Logistics, we're doing that in the following way. So firstly, I told you already, it's a volumes game. You know, it's bringing supply and demand together in the most optimal way. Really, it's extremely important to actually scale up your business there. With a strong mother company like UPS and with a strong head office also in Chicago, we're very feasible of doing that. At the same time, we want to further digitize the models that we currently have. It's been the core of our business for a long time already, but we're not there yet. We need to continuously invest in that. So that's what we're doing. Try to increase the ease of doing business, not only with us, but also with the carriers and the shippers out there. And then innovate, right? Come up with creative solutions that actually allow us to tackle the issues that we have there. And we're willing to go there, right? So we're willing to invest in that. We're willing to create those lab environments or closed user groups where we can actually tackle the issues there. And we're actively looking out there for carriers and shippers who are willing to do that with us. And to be honest, we're quite successful right now with that. We have a lot of shippers and carriers already who said, like, we like the approach. We're willing to invest in that as well. If we look at that technology part, this is an interesting one, right? So technology plays a big role in our industry, but if we ask the shippers and as well as the carriers, what are we currently doing or what are your investments there? The majority of it is in GPS, right? Tracking and tracing. That's extremely important, but that's not going to move the needle, right? That's not enough for our industry. It's followed by planning tools. But at the same time, at the bottom, you see an overall system for all tools that clients use. And if we look at, you need more focus, and I must admit that the colors are almost the same, but if we look at if we look at that one, we see that the need actually for those systems is just as high as we see for GPS, but no one is actually really investing in that. So there's a lot of room for improvement in that area, and we're definitely not there yet in our industry. So I want to round up this one with giving you a few of the examples about what we are doing and what we are going to start in the upcoming months and years to try to overcome the challenges in our industry. And we try to make this as concrete as possible, obviously. So on the one hand side, this is based on, let's say, using the community for feedback, recall that I mentioned becoming a shipper or a carrier of choice is going to be extremely important. In this one, we're going to have carriers rate facilities of our shippers. Our shippers have 13 facilities. All of them have different operating entities. We let the carriers rate all of those individual facilities. We can then go back with that data to the shippers and say, like, you have 13 facilities. 3 out of those get an extremely bad rating. Something you need to do there, because actually the carriers are telling us that they don't want to work for you anymore, right? Because of these inefficiencies. So we're going to use that more. That's all about awareness, creating awareness. That's the same one with creating more awareness about making empty miles visible, right? So how nice would it be if we could say, we're charging you 1,100 euros to transport your goods from A to B, and by the way, 380 euros out of that is to make sure that is for empty miles. We create a lot of awareness around that. At the same time, we're looking at equipment solutions. We call it POLT, Power Only Lease Truck, and we do that also together with UPS. Where we're looking at how can we make sure that for a couple of customers we fully utilize the equipment and we use the trucks out there to position those trailers for those different customers together. You can also use that model for standby or drop and swap trailers, right? The drop and swap trailer model is increasing the efficiency very rapidly. But there's only a few players who can do that. The smaller ones actually are not able to do that because they don't have a big fleet. So we're working on models there where we can bring all the small carriers together and use them in some sort of a pool, if you will, to serve also the larger customers. At the same time, we're looking at consolidation of volumes of our shippers before the tenders go out, right? So in many cases, it's a very transactional business where we talk to customers when the tender is out there, we talk about the volumes, and then we continue to do their business. But what we actually want to do is at a very early stage, get all the data from this specific shipper, match that with the data from another shipper, and then see how we can further optimize that. But that means also investment from the different shippers, right? Because if your operation is suboptimal at one of your locations, that's going to directly impact the business of the other shipper and the carrier who's actually working for you. So investment on that part are extremely important. The good thing is, again, we had a supply chain summit at our own office as well with a couple of shippers and carriers. There's a big demand for that. They like to go into that area. So we're very excited about taking that to the next level. And then obviously looking more at the predictive services and connecting all of the business, right? So we're looking at Netflix for trucks, right? So we have carriers working for us, and actually based on the work that they've done with us before, you use machine learning to actually tell that driver, this is the business that you're going to do next, based on actually what you've done before and actually what we have right now there. So we will try to augment, let's say, predictions in that area as well. So a lot of areas there where we're focusing on. We're right now identifying shippers and carriers who want to go along with us on that trip, invest in it from their part as well. We will start with closed user groups, evaluate it, and then further roll it out. So that sums it up. So I try to give you a little bit of an overview about who we as Coyote Logistics are, what we're currently doing in Europe, and what our plans are. I shared with you our view on the industry, the challenges that we see out there, but also how we try to tackle that together with our partners, with our shippers and our carriers. The whole research that we have done, we have that in a report at our booth, which is out there. It's bright green, so you can't miss it. So if you wish to find out more about the initiatives or what we are doing, then feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much.